I believe that cell phones are toxic and have no place in schools or even on school grounds. I think that there need to be school-wide, division-wide, and province-wide policies to ban cell phones in schools that are strictly enforced rather than a class-to-class cell phone policy. This was once an argument that would never need to be made because people simply didn't have cell phones, so the pushback from this proposed idea shows just how dependent on phones humans have become in the last 2 decades. One of the more obvious points is the correlation between depression and suicide rates in youth and cell phone use. Of course, cell phones make all of our lives easier, which is part of what causes a cell phone addiction. Sleep deficit, anxiety, stress, and depression have all been related to mobile phone usage. With cell phone addictions being real and an ever-growing problem, students are more and more stressed, depressed, and sleep deprived. Students are losing their ability to regulate themselves as a result of having addictions to cell phones. Allowing students who are addicted to their cell phones to have them is simply enabling them. In the same way, you wouldn't recommend someone who has an addiction to meth to carry it around with them as long as they can control their use, because they simply can't. The same goes for youth with cell phones. In schools, even the few students who can regulate themselves and do not look at their phones when they shouldn't, take the first chance that they get to look at it. As soon as the bell goes, they reach for their phone. Those who have addictions need support from others to help them fight their addiction, and the same goes for youth and cell phone use. Banning cell phones will teach students to live without their cell phones for an extended period of time each day, and will then allow them to lower their screen time at home as well. Phones are also impacting students' ability to socialize with their peers. Walking around a common area in a school at lunch or during a break can be shocking when you see all of the students nose deep in their cell phones. It makes me think of the classic dad comment, "Are you guys all just texting each other?" Students will literally sit on their phones rather than interact with one another. Limiting cell phone use will also effectively reduce bullying. Students cannot be bullied about their phone, whether it is that they do not have one or their family couldn't afford the newest iPhone. Cyberbullying will also be reduced as students will have limited access to their cell phones. But what about Kahoot or Mentimeter? Surely these are vital to students' learning, and we need cell phones for them. I know that the only Kahoots that I did with my students during my internship were because they bribed me with peanut butter cups the day after Halloween. We definitely could have gone without it. If we as high school teachers can't effectively teach without these programs, how does the grade 6 teacher do it? If they have one student in their class who hasn't got their first phone yet, that student is excluded, so this teacher would just avoid this type of activity. If you believe that programs like this are actually vital to students' learning, shouldn't it be mandatory that all students have cell phones so we can keep using Kahoot in all classes and grades? But then what about the family who can't afford cell phones for their children? Many schools in Canada have already begun to ban cell phones, including a school in Montreal, a division in Alberta, and all public schools in the province of Ontario. This ban has already led to an increase in the rate that students pass their classes. I believe that this is due to the fact that a distraction has been eliminated. Although there is little formal research to show that cell phones are major distractions in schools, it is clear to see that they are minutes after walking into a school. I'm aware that many of you, my classmates, have not spent great amounts of time in classrooms at this point in your program, but I'm sure that you can imagine just how often students are on their phones by thinking about how many times you yourself have reached for your phone in this very class.